Ron Weasley left. He left Harry, he left Hermione, he left the mission, in the middle of the darkest, most dangerous moment of the entire war. And fans have never quite forgiven him. He is weak, he's jealous, he's selfish, he doesn't deserve Hermione. This is what most people think. But here is what I want to suggest to you today. Ron leaving is not the worst moment in Harry Potter. It might be the most human, because Ron didn't leave because he was a bad person. He left because he was carrying something unbearable and nobody had taught him how. And the reason we judge him so harshly is because we recognize him, more than we would like to admit. Welcome, witches, wizards, and magical souls. I solemnly swear that your magic is limitless. So let's start maybe by remembering who Ron Weasley actually is. Because the easiest thing in the world is to reduce him to his worst moment. And that would be deeply unfair. Ron is the first real friend Harry has ever had. The person who saw a confused, overwhelmed boy on the Hogwarts Express and chose him. Not because of his car or because of his fame, but because Harry seemed like someone worth knowing. And Ron is the person who stood on broken legs in front of a murderer in book 3 and said, if you want to kill Harry, you'll have to kill us too. Ron is the person who came back, after everything, to pull Harry from a frozen lake and destroy the very thing that had broken him, the locket. Ron is funny, he's loyal, he's brave in the quiet, unglamorous way that doesn't get celebrated in the history books. But Ron has a wound. A deep, old, long-carried wound that has been there since we ever met him. And the locket finds it and tears it open. I talked a little bit about this in a previous video if you want to check it up. It's called Harry Potter 7 Part 1, Why a Fan Hates It and what it's actually teaching you. Ronald Weasley is the sixth of 7 children. Think about what it means for a moment. Before Ron could walk, every role had already been taken. Bill, the eldest, the responsible one, the trailblazer, head boy. Charlie, the adventurer, dragon tamer, fearless and free. Percy, the academic overachiever, prefect, head boy, ministry carrier. Fred and George, the stars, the entertainers, the one everyone loves, everyone laughs with them, everyone remembers. And Ginny, the youngest, the only girl, the one the whole family adores. And Ron, well, Ron is just Ron. He's not the best at anything in particular, not the most memorable, not the one with the obvious gift or the obvious role. And then, at 11 years old, his best friend turns out to be the most famous person in the wizarding world. And his other best friend turns out to be the brightest witch of her generation. Ron has spent his entire life in the shadows of people who shine brightly more than him. And he loves them, completely, but he resents them at the same time. Both things are true at once. And this is Ron's wound. It has been there quiet and unhealed since long before the locket. So now, what happens in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows? We add the Horcrux, the locket, a piece of Voldemort's soul designed to corrupt, to poison, to amplify whatever darkness already exists in the person who carries it. And here is what I find so psychologically precise about J.K. Rowling's writing. The locket doesn't invent Ron's fears. It doesn't create something that wasn't there. It takes what's already there, the wound, the insecurity, the old story, and turns up the volume until it's all he can hear. It's like his worst nightmare ever. You were never good enough. Harry is the chosen one and you are nothing. Hermione loves him. She has always loved him, not you. Your family is ashamed of you. You will always be the one who doesn't measure up. All this, well, they are not new thoughts. They are Ron's oldest, shadowiest thoughts. The ones he has been managing, suppressing, functioning around for years. And the locket removes his ability to manage them. And this is the most important thing I want you to take from this video. We all have a locket. Not a Horcrux, but a set of conditions, exhaustion, stress, isolation, fear, that strip away our coping mechanisms and leave us alone with our oldest, loudest, most painful stories. And when we are in that state, we do what Ron did. We leave, We flee away, not always literally. Sometimes we live by withdrawing, by shutting down, by picking fights, by self-sabotaging, by making the fear so loud that we can't hear anything else. So the locket is not an excuse, but it is an explanation. And there is a profound difference between those two things. Let's talk about the jealousy, because it's real and we shouldn't pretend it doesn't exist. Ron is actually jealous of Harry, not of his fame, because Ron has never cared about that. He's not either jealous of his money, even though it has stung sometimes, but he is jealous of something deeper. He is jealous of Harry's certainty. Harry always knew what he was fighting for. His parents, his friends, the wizarding word, even love. Harry's motivation is pure. This is love. We've been talking about this in a previous video as well. It's clear, it's unshakable. And Ron fights for all the same things, but he can never quite be sure of himself the way Harry is sure of himself. Ron is jealous of what he perceives between Harry and Hermione. Not because there is a romance, but because their connection is so effortless, so intellectual, so mutual. They understand each other in ways that Ron sometimes feels he never quite can. And the locket takes this jealousy, this very human, this very understandable feeling, and it becomes a weapon. When Harry destroys the locket, the Horcrux creates his final illusion. Harry and Hermione together, choosing each other, leaving Ron out. The voice of Voldemort's soul telling Ron every terrible thing that he already fears. And Harry has to stand there and watch his best friend fight the darkest version of himself. He does it, and he does destroy the locket. He frees Ron from what had been amplifying his worst fears. But here is what matters. The jealousy was never really about Harry and Hermione, but it was about Ron and himself. It was the question he had always been afraid to ask since childhood. Am I enough? Am I worth something? Do I have a place here? Not because of who I'm standing next to, but because of who I truly am? This is the real shadow, and it belongs to all of us. I'm sure these thoughts have already occurred to you. Maybe you know about Carl Jung. He is a Swiss psychologist who gave us the concept of archetypes. He also gave us the concept of shadow. The shadow is the part of ourselves that we don't want to see. The feeling that we consider shameful, the impulses that we suppress, the wounds that we have decided they are too ugly to be acknowledged. And Carl Jung's central insight was this. What we don't integrate, we project. The part of ourselves we refuse to look at don't disappear, but they go underground. And they come out sideways in our overreactions, our blind spots, our moments of inexplicable self-sabotage. Ron's shadows is his unworthiness, his conviction buried beneath years of functioning and loyalty and humor that he is the least of the people he loves. The locket doesn't create shadow, but it just forces it into light. And here is the gift, the terrible, painful, unwanted gift of the moments like Ron's leaving. You cannot heal what you cannot see. Ron had to leave. He had to hit the bottom of his own shadow, to stand in the forest alone, ashamed, and finally face the thing he had been running from his whole life, so that when he came back, he could destroy it, enough to pull Harry from the frozen lake, enough to plunge the sword into the locket. The shadow, once faced, becomes a source of power. This is the alchemy of the dark night of the soul. So Ron comes back, guided by the Deluminator, a device that Dumbledore left him specifically, as if he knew, and he comes back cold and ashamed, and not quite knowing how to say what he needs to be saying. And Harry, who could have been angry, who had every right to be hurt, he just opened the tent, no speech, no conditions, no proof to me that you've changed, just you're back, come in, you're welcome. Harry is just welcoming him unconditionally at this moment. And then Ron destroys the locket, facing the illusion of his deepest fear, speaking the truth out loud. And all this just because he allowed to face his own shadow. And this is the lesson that this passage shows us about the moments when we leave or when someone we love leaves. Leaving is not always the end of the story. Sometimes it is part of the journey, and this is what makes the return possible. If Ron hadn't left, he could not have destroyed the locket, because he hadn't done the inner work yet. He wasn't ready. His leaving, as painful as it was for him, for Harry, for Hermione, was part of his becoming of who he actually is. So let me ask you, honestly, with as much self-compassion as you can bring to this, where have you been around? Where have you left? Maybe a relationship, a project, a version of yourself you were growing into? Because the locket got too loud. Because the wound, I'm not enough, I don't belong here, they would better be off without me, became louder than the mission. And I want to ask you something else, equally important. What is your locket? What are the conditions that strip away your coping mechanisms and leave you alone with your oldest, darkest story? Is it isolation, comparison, a kind of criticism that hits the exact wound that you have been carrying since childhood? Name it, see it, not to shame yourself, but to recognize it. Ron teaches us that the shadow doesn't go away by pretending it doesn't exist. It goes away because it is being faced. You have to pull out the sword, look directly at the illusion, and say out loud what the darkest has been whispering. And then this is when you take back your power. I am enough. I belong here. My presence matters. Not because it's easy to believe, but because it is true. And because someone is waiting for you to come back to the tent. So Ron is actually the most honest character in the Deathly Hallows, because he shows us, without flinching, without flattering himself, what it looks like to be a human under pressure, to have a shadow, to let it win for a while, and then to come back anyway. The shadow is not the enemy. It is the part of you that most needs your attention, your compassion, your courage, to look at it directly and say, I see you, and you don't get to run my life. This is your ridiculous, your Patronus. This is your sword of Gryffindor, plunged into the Horcrux. Leave me a comment below and tell me, what is the locket you've been carrying, and what would it mean to finally face what is inside of it? I am Alice. I'll see you next week. And until next time, remember, the one chooses the wizard, but you chooses everything else. May your choices be your magic.